The Adventures of Sinbad the Sailor.
Sinbad comes from a collection of Arabian stories, known as the 1001 Nights. According to legends, a sultan wanted to kill his wife. To save herself, the wife started telling a wonderful story. The sultan found the story so good, he let her live to finish it. Then she started another one. Hundreds of stories and 101 nights later, the sultan let his wife go. Let's start.
Chapter 1. Sinbad's First Voyage. Long ago, in the city of Baghdad, Sinbad lived with his father, a rich merchant. When the merchant died, he left Sinbad his whole fortune. Sinbad was so rich he didn't need to work. Instead, he spent his money on fine clothes and wild parties. Don't worry, everything's on me. One day, he was shocked to find his purse empty. I can't believe I've spent my fortune, he said to himself. He decided to follow in his father's footsteps and sell things for a living. First, he sold his house. Then he bought some expensive silks and spices and went down to the port. We're sailing to Basra, then out to sea. A group of merchants were busy loading their ship. They invited Sinbad to join them, and he jumped on board. After a week at sea, they dropped anchor by a sandy island. They were cooking supper over a fire when the ground began to tremble. "The island is moving!" "It's not an island! We're on a whale!" cried the captain and swam to the ship. The others were flung into the sea as the whale flipped its tail and dived underwater. Many men drowned, but Sinbad was lucky. He clung on to a wooden chest and floated through the night. At dawn, he landed on the shore of a distant island. A man on horseback spotted Sinbad and took him to see his ruler, King Marajan. Sinbad told the king about the whale. "Now I'm stranded far from home," he sighed. "Work for me and I'll look after you," said the king. "Okay." One day, Sinbad was on duty at the port when a captain came up to him. "Sir, where can I sell these silks and spices?" he asked. Sinbad was amazed. "I had some silk like that," he said. "Well, these silks belong to a merchant called Sinbad," said the captain. "I am Sinbad," cried Sinbad, "but I thought you'd drowned. I drifted to safety." The captain gave Sinbad his silks and spices. After selling them at an excellent price, Sinbad joined the captain's ship and set sail for Baghdad. Chapter 2. Itchy Feet. At first, Sinbad was delighted to be home, but soon he had itchy feet. He wanted to visit new places, so he bought more silks and spices to trade. A friendly captain welcomed him on board his ship, and they headed for the high seas. This is the life. One day, they stopped at a deserted island to collect fresh water. Sinbad sat down in a shady spot and fell asleep. An hour later, he woke in a panic. The ship had set sail without him. He was stranded. Sinbad climbed a tree and looked over the island. All he could see was one huge white egg. As Sinbad watched, a gigantic bird flew onto the egg and settled down to sleep. It must be a roc. Sinbad knew the roc bird was very strong. Maybe it could rescue him. He unwound his turban, crept up to the bird, and tied himself to its leg. When the roc woke up, it stretched its giant wings and soared into the sky. Sinbad found himself dangling high above the clouds. Gulp. Before long, the roc dived down into a deep valley. Sinbad felt hard ground beneath his feet and quickly untied himself. The roc caught a sheep in its claws and flew away. Sinbad stared in fear at the steep-sided valley. It was squirming with snakes, which slithered over dead sheep. Then Sinbad noticed the ground was studded with jewels. He was stuffing some in his pockets when he saw a vicious snake eyeing him hungrily. Sinbad ducked down. How could he escape? Seeing the roc circling overhead gave him an idea. Quickly he tied himself to a sheep and waited. In no time, a rock swooped down and grabbed the sheep in its claws. It flew out of the valley, with Sinbad trailing below. The rock landed on a cliff. It was about to eat the sheep when a group of men charged at the bird, scaring it away. "Bother," said one. "No jewels in this sheep's wool." Then they spotted Sinbad. His escape from Snake Valley amazed them. In return for some jewels, they put him on a ship bound for Baghdad. Chapter 3. The Greedy Giant. Once more, Sinbad was delighted to be home, but the feeling didn't last long. This time, he traded a bag of jewels for silks and spices to sell. His third journey went well, and land was in sight when a bunch of short, ugly, and very hairy men ambushed the ship. One by one, the hairy men threw the merchants overboard, then sailed away. "How dare you take our ship?" The miserable merchants were washed onto a beach. They explored the new shore and found a courtyard filled with pots and firewood. But the courtyard was owned by a greedy giant who licked his lips when he saw his visitors. Before they could blink, he roasted a fat merchant. After supper, the giant fell asleep, across the only exit. "Don't worry," whispered Sinbad. "When he leaves, we'll take his firewood and make a raft so we can escape." At dawn, the giant woke up, heaved himself to his feet and left. The men hurried to the beach, where they tied the firewood together with vines. As they pushed off from the shore, they heard a big splash. The angry giant was pelting the raft with rocks. Seconds later, a rock smashed the raft to pieces. "Ah!" Most of the men drowned, but Sinbad and 2 others were lucky. They survived by clinging onto a log, but by noon they had fainted under the hot sun. The next thing they knew, they had drifted onto a stony beach and a huge snake had wound itself around them. It eyed the 3 men, opened its mouth wide and swallowed Sinbad's 2 friends. "Maybe I'm too skinny." Sinbad didn't dare move until the snake had slithered off. He gazed out to sea, praying for a ship to arrive, and one did. Better still, Sinbad recognised the captain from his second journey. "You left me stranded on a desert island." "Sorry about that." Within a week, Sinbad was back in Baghdad. Chapter 4. Herds of Men. "Home again," cried Sinbad, but it didn't take long before he was back at the market, buying silks and spices. He joined another merchant ship and traded his goods from port to port. One day a sudden gale whipped up the waves. Water came crashing onto the deck and smashed up the ship. Sinbad and 7 other merchants were luckier than the rest. They clung on to the broken mast and drifted to a far-off shore. Some islanders found the men and took them to their king. "Welcome," said the king. "Please join us for a feast." Yum! They were all starving, except for Sinbad. He just watched as the others gobbled down food. To his horror, the hungry men turned into slurping, guzzling animals. "Stop eating!" Sinbad cried. But the men no longer understood him. An islander rounded up Sinbad's friends and herded them through the door. Sinbad hid in a dark corner. When no one was looking, he fled from the palace grounds. He ran straight past the herd of men who were grazing in a field, and he didn't stop until he'd reached the other side of the island. "I see a sail!" There he couldn't believe his luck. A ship was sailing close to shore. He waved at it wildly, and the captain waved back. Soon Sinbad was heading for Baghdad again. Chapter 5. The Rock's Revenge. The problem was, Sinbad found life at home dull after his adventures. One morning he saw a beautiful new ship at the port and decided to buy it. He loaded the ship with silks and spices, hired an eager crew, and set sail. They came to an island with another roc's egg. Some sailors were curious and went to see it. They threw stones at the egg to see how tough it was. 50 stones later, it cracked. "Fools!" cried Sinbad. "The mother rock will want revenge." As they sailed away, a dark shape hid the sun. It was a rock. She dropped a massive boulder on the ship, and all but Sinbad perished in the sea. Yet again, Sinbad was saved. This time he was swept to a leafy island. As he paused for water by a stream, he saw a sad troll. "What's wrong?" Sinbad helped the troll cross the stream. But then the troll refused to get down from Sinbad's shoulders. It just tightened its grip around his neck. For days, Sinbad was the troll's prisoner. He carried it everywhere until he was exhausted. Then he remembered he had a flask of wine. The troll saw Sinbad take a sip and snatched the flask. It glugged down the wine and was soon swaying from side to side. A few burps later, it toppled to the ground. Sinbad ran away and met some people carrying baskets. "Can you help me get to Baghdad?" he asked hurriedly. "If you help us collect more coconuts," replied a bald man. "How?" wondered Sinbad, following the group into a forest of palms. Monkeys chattered in every tree. "Watch," said the man. He picked up a stone and threw it at a monkey. The monkey was very annoyed and threw a coconut back at the man. "Hey, that nearly hit me." Soon all the monkeys were throwing coconuts. Sinbad easily collected enough to pay for his trip home. Chapter 6. Risking the River. For a while, Sinbad was happy simply lazing around at home. Then some merchants came to visit, and their tales of travel filled Sinbad with envy. He set sail once more, trading from port to port. What a lovely, calm evening! Until one night, the ship sailed off course. In the gloom, no one saw sharp rocks ahead. The ship was smashed to pieces, and only Sinbad and 4 others reached the shore. They searched the craggy island from top to bottom and found nothing but rocks and water. One by one, the men starved to death. "Help! I'll be next!" Before long, Sinbad was the only man left. He sat by a river, feeling very alone. Then he noticed something strange. The river was flowing into a cave, not out to sea. Sinbad had an idea. "I'll make a raft," he thought, "and hope the river leads me to some food." The riverbed sparkled with jewels, so he took a few handfuls before floating off. His raft glided into the cave and sped up, hurtling through darkness. All Sinbad could hear was the whoosh of water. Had his luck finally run out? The next thing he knew, he was lying on a sunny bank. He looked up to see a crowd gathered around him. "He's alive! He's rich!" A local merchant gave Sinbad some food and, in return for several jewels, sent him on a ship to Baghdad. Chapter 7. The Final Voyage. Back home, Sinbad's jewels bought him all kinds of treats. But guess what? Sinbad still wasn't content. "Soon I'll be too old to travel," he thought. So he set out on a final journey. He was aboard a merchant ship in the China Sea when a terrible storm blew up. A monster whale surged up through the waves. As it got closer, it opened its massive jaws and swallowed the ship in one gulp. Luckily, Sinbad managed to jump overboard just in time. The storm died down, and once again he drifted to a strange shore. "Another close escape. I don't know how I do it." As he wandered through an exotic forest, he found a river flowing into a cave. "Aha! I'll build another raft," thought Sinbad. But this river carried him through darkness to a steep waterfall. "I'm a dead man!" Sinbad screamed as he started falling. "That's a very big fish." Suddenly he stopped. In mid-air, a surprised old man had caught him in a net. "You need to dry off," said the man, and he took Sinbad home with him. The old man asked his daughter Amira to fetch some clothes. Sinbad gazed at her, open-mouthed. He had never seen such a lovely woman. "Thank you very much." Amira's father thought Sinbad was charming and invited him to stay. Over the next few weeks, Amira and Sinbad fell in love. With the old man's blessing, the couple married. A year later, Emira's father died of old age, leaving her and Sinbad a fortune. "Why don't we go sailing?" said Sinbad. "We could buy some silks and spices to trade." "Oh, yes," replied Emira, who had always wanted to travel. After months at sea, they found themselves in Baghdad. "What a gorgeous city!" cried Emira. "Isn't it?" agreed Sinbad. He was delighted to be home, at least for a while.
Here are some phrases from the story. Listen and repeat. I can't believe I've spent my fortune. It's not an island. Sinbad was lucky. I'll look after you. This is the life. Sinbad was delighted to be home. Don't worry. Sinbad didn't dare move. Sorry about that. Home again. Please join us for a feast. Stop eating. What's wrong? Can you help me? That nearly hit me. What a lovely evening. He noticed something strange. He's alive. Guess what? Soon I'll be too old. I don't know how I do it. What a gorgeous city.
The end. Please don't forget to subscribe and thumb up. See you later in another story. Bye.